Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with Omnath, Locus of All. This is a 5-color Goodstuff deck that comes to us from Death Penalties. I hope you've all been doing well. I had to take last week off because I got to go to a wedding. Lots of fun, but I'm ready to get back into it. And if you haven't seen, the new Edge of Eternities cards are really cool. Though we won't be looking at any of them today, I definitely got to playtest some of the cards and commanders early, and you can see those videos coming up on MTG Mazda's channel if you haven't seen them already. So this deck comes to us from Death Penalties, who says that the deck is pretty strong, but it might be a little lacking in focus, and it might be pulled in too many directions. And I can see that, but I think honestly this deck is particularly good as is. Though I definitely have some points I want to pick on it, I do like a lot of the inclusions. We're gonna get into this more after the commander, but I really do feel that there is this new kind of way of playing, commander, where it's not so much of like thematic, it's not so much of like engine decks, but just like straight good stuff where you get yourself into a position where you can just slam down strong card after strong card, and eventually your opponents just cannot keep up. And because we are in 5 colors, we have a wide net we get to throw out for good stuff. But let's get into that in a moment. First, let's take a look at the commander and see what they bring to this 5-color deck. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So who is Omnath, Locus of All, and why are they our 5-color commander? Well, Omnath, Locus of All is the final form of Omnath, a elemental from Zendikar that kept gaining colors over and over until it finally gained its final color, black, though of course because of the Phyrexian mana symbol here, almost pseudo-black. You actually don't need any black mana to cast this card, and this would be the moment, probably the end of this creature's like history, right? Like, I don't think it comes back from being Phyrexianized, which, if you ask me, I'm kind of okay with. Omnath is a really cool card, but I think we really pushed this legendary creature as far as they would go. Like, every new edition of this card was stronger and wilder. I think it's a good time to say this is as far as we'll go. Omnath is a 5, but let's be honest, a 4-mana 4/4 in white, blue, red, green, with 2 life instead of black. They have 2 abilities. The first one is cool because it's traditionally not an ability you see in black, which is if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. We've definitely seen this with colorless, and I believe green as well, or also colorless. I'm trying to remember. I think Kurfix just says any color, and it just stays in your mana pool. But what this means is any mana you would lose while going between phases just becomes black mana instead and stays in your mana pool. But the second ability is really the more interesting one to me. It says, if the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its cost, and if you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it into your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand. So what does this do? In kind of a complicated way, it puts a card in your hand every turn. And maybe that might be underselling it, but I really do like this card as its floor, right? Realistically, in any deck, especially an Omnath deck, more than half of your deck is not going to meet the cost of this ability, right? We take all the lands, then we take all of like the necessary either removal or utility cards, ramp, or any colorless artifacts you might control or you might have in your deck, and all of a sudden you've got probably quite a bit of cards that just will not trigger Omnath. So I think it's fair to say Omnath, after the turn it gets played, starts drawing you a card every turn. However, when you do hit the cards that have the multiple mana symbols, and we can see quite a few of them here, of course, we start getting into situations where it's a dark ritual of sorts, because it generates 3 mana. That 3 mana becomes black at a certain point, so to me it's like dark ritual, while also ideally being able to use that to pay for that mana cost. And that leads into a very particular kind of gameplay style. So this is what I alluded to earlier. I think the thing that makes this deck strong, more than anything else, more than any individual card, more than any individual synergy, is its ability to spend the first 5-6 turns of the game just kind of setting up, putting extra lands into play, and then from that moment onward, every turn you're going to be putting in another powerful card. You're going to be dropping down like a big bomb, a big effect, you're going to wipe the board, you're going to destroy all your opponent's creatures, things like that, and you're going to be in a particularly good position from that. And that no matter what your opponents are doing on a long enough time frame, it doesn't actually matter, right? Because yeah, you can drop out Uro, you can drop out Kefka, and your opponents can remove them or wipe the board. But the turn after, you're dropping the two-headed Hellkite, etc., etc. Like, you're always kind of pushing forward, and your opponents are always kind of trying to keep up. And I think that is particularly strong and a good way to play this game. Now, that being said, there are some elements to this deck that I think are weaker than others. Namely, I think some of the cards that are on our top end, some of our interaction cards are somewhat, I think, a little too weak. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, let's start with the instants. So the first bunch of instants I really, really like. They're in multiple colors. We've got 2 really good counter spells. 3 really good counter spells. We have really good removal. We have a tutor. We have Veil of Summer. And I like that. I like that kind of collection. But the second we keep going, it gets a little trickier, right? Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy kind of do the same thing. I think I prefer Assassin's Trophy over Abrupt Decay because it throws a wider net. And at Counterspell, I kind of start struggling a little bit because this card, as a card, is against the strategy we're trying to put together. Now, this might be confusing to a lot of players because, or a lot of deck building, when you go, hey, but shouldn't we be playing interaction over like synergies? You always say that, and I do. But another aspect of that is playability and long-term plans, right? So for example, if I'm building a deck that is trying to combo out, Counterspell gets really, really good because I'm trying to protect like a key piece dropping. And even if those key pieces could be like value pieces, like protecting a Smothering Tithe, sure, that's fine. But generally it gets better when my synergies are really, really strong. But this is not a deck about synergies. This is a deck about literally outvaluing our opponents with tremendously strong plays. And in those kind of situations, Counterspell gets a little weaker. Not completely weaker, because obviously I'm okay with some counter magic, but in considering the 2 blue, and this is the main thing I want to talk about, it starts getting a little worse. So why is the 2 blue a problem here? Well, if we look at the deck list itself, we can see that blue is one of our lower colors played outside of the instant section. And almost universally, blue is being played as a single pip. It allows us to be a little, more proactive with how we fetch, how we shock, which lands we use, because we can play around the fact that more often than not, we will only ever need 1 blue pip per turn, right? This also applies to our commander. And if we don't get the Chromatic Lantern, if we don't get really a few lands that allow us to do anything, we get into situations where it becomes troublesome. So like that 2 blue for Counterspell is actually kind of difficult for us to do. And by trying to make that happen, we're causing a bit of a problem for ourselves. Now, if you were to say, well, Curse, does that mean you just rather like one of those like blue-white counter spells that can't be countered and it's a negate, or any other color combination like Arcane Denial, 1 and a blue? And the answer would be yeah, I actually would prefer Arcane Denial quite a bit. I think it makes quite a bit of difference here. Oh, Dovin's Veto. So here it is. Sorry, I see the Final Fantasy name and I got a little confused. But yeah, so Dovin's Veto I would like way more. So with that, if this is Arcane Denial, it is Arcane Denial. Okay, sorry, this one's on me. I looked over them and they were deleted from our mind. So, I mean, I guess if those were the ones I was thinking of, I think it's really easy to say we could just cut the counter spell. At a certain point, we're going a little too far. Force of Negation, I think, is fine with 2 blue pips because it's not how it's supposed to be played, right? It's supposed to be cast for free, so I don't see that too much of a problem. And I will say, for an extent, Soul Shatter feels a little weird. Don't get me wrong, I understand that it's a very, very clean 3-for-1 that we like to cast. When we use Omnath's ability, getting the 3 colored pips, as long as one of them are black, we get to just cast this. And as long as Omnath's in play and we have an excess of mana, Soul Shatter's like always open. So I get that. But that being said, I still think I'd prefer something like just board clears, or Flare of Malice even would be a little better, mainly because these cards just push that value a little further, right? This is almost uniquely one of the cleanest 3-for-1s we have in the deck, not because the deck is weak, but it's actually the opposite, because the deck is so strong. So many like versions of our effects are trying to dig so deep or do so much for us, like think of Atraxa and things like that, right? We're trying to get so far ahead with our plays that it just doesn't seem necessary for us to be just trying to go for clean 3-for-1s, right? So it stands out as being a little weak. I think honestly, I wouldn't mind like Nature's Claim or something in this slot. Just another 1 mana card. Once again, 1 mana in 1 color is really nice for us to be able to deal with enchantments, to deal with you know, anything of that nature, because I feel like Blood Moon is particularly devastating for us. So Nature's Claim being able to destroy Blood Moon and other artifacts would be really nice. Looking at the creatures themselves, I'm generally very happy with them. Ornithopter of Paradise really kind of sticks out as one of the weakest mana dorks we have, and I think it's fine because obviously we're playing almost every other playable mana dork at this point. But even then, like, do we really need this one here? I don't know if it does that much for us, and we're not taking advantage of like growing it, getting the attacks in, anything like that. And though I have a card to kind of work with these mana dorks a lot better, I'm still kind of less interested in it. And in fact, I think Ornithopter of Paradise would be a lot happier if it was a land. Okay, maybe the Ornithopter wouldn't be happier, but your deck would be happier if it was just a land. Because 36 lands is actually a little low for this deck that wants to reasonably cast at one point in the game, hard cast some of these really high mana cards in multiple colors. Going up to 37, maybe 38 lands can still be really, really good. On that note, we could also play a few more MDFCs, but that's neither here nor there. Looking at the other cards we have here, I generally like almost all of them. Where I start you kind of start losing me is near the top end. So as the deck builder said, as Death Penalty said, that they were worried that Focus was pulling it in too many directions. And the top end of this deck definitely does feel like it's just being pulled in a lot of directions, and that a lot of them are here because they're very strong and contain 3 colored pips. And it's close, right? Something that I think is interesting in a deck like this is that you can use colored pips off of like Tivit to cast something else, right? It's not specifically that we have to use it to add that mana towards that spell. It's just that the colors of mana are held back by the colors, the colors that come out of the spell we reveal, or the card we reveal, right? And so there's not too much of a problem of some of these cards not synergizing as much. It's more that like I want them to be generally very powerful. And at this point in the game, like, yes, we can cheat this card out for kind of 3 mana if our commander procs it, but I also want to make the most of casting these cards and like make sure we're getting more than 3 times benefit, right? That 3-for-1 thing, we want to go further because later in the game we want to do really, really well. Tivit here isn't interesting, right? Tivit is a 6 mana flying ward 3 that says on ETB you get either 2 treasures or either 2 clues, and then 3 other artifacts depending on your opponents, right? So, of course, the trick is that you vote first, your opponents then get to vote after, so most likely they're going to be giving you treasure over clues. Not always, but most of the time. But if you desperately needed treasure, you got the treasure off your own, right? And then your opponents will just give you more treasure, because is that really the problem here? And then only if you have like a million cards and they aren't worried about you drawing will they give you clues, right? In a deck like this, clues are just way more powerful than treasures, even though that seems like the antithesis of how these decks kind of work. This is actually the problem here, because you defeat your opponents by playing better cards than them on a long enough scale and not rushing into those cards. Like, that's not the problem here. So with that in mind, Tivit kind of sticks out as being a little weak. If you ever played Tivit as your commander, you know the secret is not what Tivit creates, is how many he creates. The fact that he creates 5 artifact tokens on ETB is really, really good. Blink strategies, artifact strategies, all these kind of things really, really do love him, and he's very strong there. Here, I feel like he's just not doing a lot, and therefore can very easily be cut. Two-headed Hellkite, for me, and this is a tough thing to say, I think it's kind of cute. Don't get me wrong, when no one has interaction, this is a very good play, because it immediately draws 2 cards, and I think that's really, really cool. But if this gets counterspelled, removed before it can attack, it kind of feels particularly bad, especially if you pay 6 mana for this. Is that okay? I'm going to leave that to you. This one's really, really close. Don't get me wrong. It's a very cool card. I really like the flavor of it. But to me, it's just a little too close. Like, I think I would probably prefer the Warhammer 40k Demon. I can't remember it. I played it in my pirate deck. It ETBs and you draw 3. I think it's like 6 mana to play. And that's just better in my mind. It's just consistent. It's not 5 color. It doesn't have the colored pips, which is worth considering. So it doesn't fit in this deck as well. But that's kind of the bar I'm holding Two-Headed Hellkite for up to. That is just really, really good when things go your way. I think it's also worth considering that, like, a lot of the strength of this card is that line of whenever this creature attacks, draw 2 cards, which makes it is not a good defense card. Like, if you're playing this to stay in the game and avoid an attack, this is a terrible card. And if you are just unable to attack for a number of reasons, like I'm thinking ghostly prisons and things like that hold you back, this creature entering tapped, for example, which will come up later, those kind of effects really, really hurt this card. And I think universally, you're going to want something else. Something that I might have accidentally tapped to earlier and you might have seen. But if you didn't, haha, that'll be fun to look at either. So for me, Two-Headed Hellkite is particularly weak. Especially, like, momentarily, let's just compare it to Atraxa. And I know that's profoundly unfair. Like, comparing almost any creature to Atraxa Grand Unifier is so mean, because Atraxa is so good. But the difference between playing 1 additional mana and drawing probably 3 to 4 cards out of the top 10, like, it's no contest, right? And so the difference between those cards is not. Baleful Force likewise feels extraordinarily cute, like unbelievably cute, to the point that I feel like it's almost a problem to play this card, because you cast it and you have to commit to a turn cycle of losing life for it to do anything, which means the only way that happens, something's going wrong, right? Like, your opponents have to be completely unable to deal with this. They have to also not be willing to attack into you aggressively, and still, like, even then, it's not great. I don't particularly like it. I do like the idea of saving up a tremendous amount of black mana and pseudo free casting this off of Omnath, but if you're doing that, you're really far ahead, and that's a little ridiculous. I would prefer this actually to be Dredge Mangler. Once again, it doesn't fit that 3-colored pip, but to me, that's not as important as the effect it does on immediate entry, which is going to come up. A few of the cards I'm going to suggest only have 2 colored pips, and I still think they're worth it. So Baleful Force doesn't get me going. So Maelstrom Wanderer, fantastic card. Myojin of Night's Reach is not where I really want this to be. I don't know. I think maybe this is just a card I am lacking experience with, because this is one of the few decks that is able to slam down Myojin of Night's Reach, immediately remove the divinity counter, and discard all your opponent's hands. But even with that, you are casting this spell for 5 mana because of the reduction of 3. And that's only if it triggers, right? So best case scenario, you cast this for 5. There are 5 mana black cards that discard everyone's hands that I think are just more reliable. Don't get me wrong, they discard your hand too, and that's not great, but it is worth considering, because that can reliably be cast at 5. This can only be reliably cast at 5 sometimes, and still needs to come into play, and then ends up being a 5/2. A 5/2 is not a particularly strong creature, so it's like you put this into play, you discard all your opponent's hand. Comparing this to like Lord, is it Lord of Pain? No, the Demon. It's like at each end step, every player discards their hand, a card I really, really like. This just really feels like it doesn't hold up due to its mana cost and what it is. And I think this is really important, there's going to be times that this line of text is just not good enough, right? And that might sound a little crazy, but it is reasonable to go up against opponents that have their commanders going and have like, you know, Phyrexian Arena effects or other triggered draw effects so that they can start their turn and draw 2 or 3 cards. And this is just not going to solve that problem. I think it's also worth considering with the sheer power level of decks that I think this kind of deck will face against, that even if you discard their hands, you know, an opponent might just be in a winning state already, and you just made 2 of their opponents discard their hands, basically locking them into the win. And if you're like, well, Cursed, I'm playing Myojin and I'm gonna do other things, and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of nuts, right? Like, you need so much mana, you need your commander out, you need it to trigger, you need to play Myojin, you need to remove the divinity counter, and then you're gonna hold up what? Removal or like deal with the board. I mean, okay. The dream is you play Myojin, you board clear, and then you remove the divinity counter, so your opponents have no creatures, you have a 5/2, and they have no cards in hand. Even then, I'm like, okay, like, you got a 5/2, I think that's fine. You're probably winning the game, but you were probably winning the game before. So I'm pretty ambivalent about that. Going to the last 2, Villa's Broker of Blood is an amazing Magic card. I don't think this is where it belongs. I want it to be with Kuruk. I want it to be with other ways to instantly pay life. You have Necropotence, and I think that's it. And so I don't know. I think this is a tremendously good card. Like, don't get me wrong. This is an amazing Magic card. If you have not resolved Villas, you should do it at least once, because you will draw your deck incredibly fast. And an 8/8 that has flying is pretty great too. But I just don't feel like this card by itself has, like, when we compare it to other cards that I don't even feel the need to talk about, like Torment of Hailfire, A Debt to the Debtless, Ruinous Ultimatum, Peer into the Abyss, like the sheer Lavalanche even, the sheer difference in the advantage you gain immediately by having these cards out is kind of night and day. And though Villas can represent a situation where, you know, you reduce the mana cost, you play this for 5, you have, what, 2 to 3 additional black mana. That black mana stays in your battlefield, and whenever you can, you start paying this to basically draw, like, 6 to 8 cards in one turn. I guess maybe I'm talking myself into it a little bit, but I think it's close. I think, like, if you had reliable reanimation, if you had reliable ways to cheat this out, if you had reliable ways to make an absurd amount of black mana, like if you had Urborg and Cabal Coffers, I think I'd be a lot keener on this. But Villas kind of feels like he's out here holding himself up, like he's doing his best by himself. And though that's really impressive, I think it's just not the same degree, because there's going to be situations that Villas only manages to draw you like 4 to 6 cards. And though that sounds really good, the amount of mana and opportunity... I am walking out of frame, I'm so sorry. The amount of mana and opportunity you have given up to do this is just too much. and is going to cost too much in a deck like this. Like, play Villas. Don't play Villas here. All right. Last one before we go to additions, Valgavoth. I think Valgavoth is fine. This one, once again, has a bit of a problem where I'm like, hey, I'd really like this to do something on Enter the Battlefield. This is once again going to be addressed to an extent in my additions. But also, we've got the situation where this is a 9 mana creature. Like, this is the highest we've got, right? This is 9 mana. So even with your commander's ability, we are only cutting out so much mana of this. So we are casting Valgavoth fairly. And I think I'm just going to end that thought there. Like, I just think that's not acceptable, right? I think if we played some reanimate shenanigans, I think if we played a few more cheating cards, we have 5 colors, we have the means to do so. This gets way better. But Valgavoth is so fair here. And in a format where board clears are very commonly played, I think this is not going to be good enough. I think it's also worth considering that there are going to be situations where your opponents are put in a situation where they're going to be able to wait out Valgavoth, if that makes sense. Like, Valgavoth's real strength is that 9/9 flying lifelink plus this ward makes it a very difficult creature to deal with. Your opponents actually have to do something on one-on-one to stop this from happening. But between 3 opponents and this Valgavoth only doing 9, there's situations where your opponents are going to be like, okay, in a turn cycle, someone's going to deal with this, if not 2. And in the meantime, they're going to be like really conservative with their plays. Avoid instants and sorceries, avoid casting cards or doing things that will benefit Valgavoth. Like, you can toss out your counter spells because Valgavoth's ability to cast counter spells is very held back by how this ability works because it's only during their own turn. So you can throw out those kind of effects and force them to eventually deal with it, or you can wipe the board. Sure, everything gets exiled, but once again, how Valgavoth works is to stop you from being able to cast those cards when Valgavoth leaves the battlefield. All in all, this just feels like not the exact thing I want to see. There's a lot I like about this. I want to say that there's something I really do enjoy about the top end being as a majority black cards to work with our commander. I think that's very good on the behalf of the deck builder. But I think generally these collections of cards are just not doing the same thing as the rest of the deck, which is getting the most value out of your cards. So let's go into some additions very quickly. So the first one, Painful Truths. I know I was talking earlier 3-for-1s not being exactly where this deck wants to be, but I will say there is something particularly satisfying about how this card works in this deck, because you can reveal a number of 3-color, including black cards, and be able to cast Painful Truth off of your Omnath trigger in your main phase and draw 3 cards. And I do particularly like that. Painful Truths is a particularly strong card, and being able to easily activate it is nice. However, this could also be, Night's Whisper, Read the Bones, one of these cards. I just feel like we're in a situation where we're kind of missing a little card draw directly. And when we're in 5 colors, I find these cards to be the ones that dig very reliably and get you as many cards as you can. So when we have the Necropotence, when we have Ristic, when we have Esper Sentinel, it's still good to have 1 or 2 direct draw spells. One more, and this is going to be a bridge into the next ideas that I'm going to put out there. Stronghold Arena is a card you get to play that many other players do not get to play. What do I mean by that? Well, honestly, one of the perks of being 5 colors that players don't usually think about, because 5-color decks tend to be extremely themed, like slivers, built around a very specific commander or a specific mechanic. So we don't usually see value cards in them, and in CEDH we don't play these cards. Stronghold Arena is held back by the fact that it's a black card that's actually an Abzan card. Because of the kickers in here, you have to be playing in 3 colors. But you, as a 5-color deck, this doesn't matter. So you get to play Stronghold Arena. Stronghold Arena is, in its effect, a Dark Confidant effect that triggers every single time one of your creatures hits each opponent. So it triggers up to 3 times. This is a card that I have played and is flat out amazing. Getting 3 Bob triggers every time you attack is really, really good, and one of the ways you can leverage those mana dorks later in the game. It's not always the case that like your opponents all have no creatures, but when one opponent is open and you've got like an elf or something that can attack, getting a Bob trigger is pretty good. That being said, this is going to hurt you a lot, right? This is really important to consider, is the fact that with your mana curve being, it's actually something we didn't look at. I thought it was so straightforward, but your mana curve is really nice, but goes for a while, right? You could be losing a tremendous amount of life by doing this. If that bothers you, I think that's valid. Would not bother me, not in a million years. I would take the draw 3, lose 13 life or something every single time. But it is fair that it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I wanted to put it here. All right. Let's talk about one of the 3 color cards that I really, really want to suggest, and that's Thalia and the Gitrog Monster. Now, I think outside of the 3 color, 3 mana cards, right, because those can be straight up played off of Omnath's trigger, Thalia and the Gitrog Monster, these kind of 4, 3 colored, 1 colorless pips, are pretty close to being the best cards you can have in your deck. Because if they get revealed cleanly, they can be cast for 1 mana, which isn't too bad. If something else gets revealed, you get to reduce an aspect up to 2. Like, let's assume you get like a 3 black pip card, you can at least remove 2 of the colors cast this 2. If you reveal a card that has at least 2 of the colors, once again you're removing 2 pips. If it okay, so it's 3 mana. Sorry, brain. You're still at least removing 3 whole pips, bringing it down to 1 mana. So like a black and green card with 3 pips puts this into 1. All that to say, really, really like just the mana cost beginning with this card. But even beyond that, Thalia and the Gitrog Monster is just a really, really strong card. Every line of text of this card is really, really relevant. She attacks with impunity. Nothing can, they have to really overblock to actually do anything for her, and even then they have to overblock in a way that causes a lot of trouble, right? Because you're still going to destroy the creatures with the most toughness first. After that, playing an extra land on each of your turns solves another very big problem the deck has, where there's a point where your commander gets hated out and you have to get to these high mana costs, and Thalia will make the most of that and drop land after land. And then later, when she attacks, you get to sack those lands or those mana dorks. As I said before, a use for them is to turn them into card draw, which is stronger. I think Thalia and the Gitrog Monster does a lot. There is something to be said about a bunch of other of these kind of what we call stacks or hate bear effects. These are kind of creatures that slow down your opponents. There's a lot of different ones you could be playing, and that could be a direction you want to go into. But here, I really like the Thalia and the Gitrog Monster. I think this is one of the strongest ones. This effect of stopping your opponent's momentum is very, very valid, and valid, very strong. It's valid. It's also very strong. Another one that I thought was very surprisingly not in here is Muldrotha, the Gravetide. This is one of those cards that benefits, I think, the most out of a mana reduction and the most out of, having all of that black mana floating. Because Muldrotha's biggest problem is that she costs so much mana to play. It's a tremendous investment to get Muldrotha out, and then in order to make the most of her, you really want to be able to cast cards from your graveyard. But depending on your mana, you might not be able to do that, and if you're playing Muldrotha and then playing a land and passing, that doesn't feel good at all. Like, you really need your opponents to then just not do anything for you to get the most out of her, which sucks. However, here, I think it's very, very feasible for Muldrotha to work the way you intend her to. That she'll come out and you'll have additional mana to just throw out an enchantment that died, a low mana dork, or like an artifact. Like Esper Sentinel is an artifact and not a creature, so you get another thing out of there. You get to play a land that's a fetch land that you get to grab another 2 to 3 color land, right? These things are really, really impressive, and I think, as I've said before, this deck that wants to just go as hard as it can and just create so much value out of high mana multicolored cards, you're going to be in a position later in the game that when you play Muldrotha, you're going to get a ton of value, and your opponents are probably too exhausted on resources to really keep up with her or take her out in the first place. So, fantastic card. I think this is definitely the one you should play more than anything. But a very close second. Lord Windgrace is a card I tend to be just so impressed. I am boggled that I don't see more of it. And I think I know why I don't see more Lord Windgrace, and it's this text right here. There's something in Magic players especially, but Commander players even more, in the minds of these players where they see text that says you can do X, and they think only do X, like only use this if you're doing X. Lord Windgrace is an incredibly powerful card. He just does so much. The ability to just play him and immediately put 2 cards into play from your graveyard. 2 lands. This is Cultivate, but way better. You're playing enough fetches so you get to immediately do this. He goes down to 2 loyalty, and then your opponents have to invest in getting rid of him as fast as possible, right? Then if they can't, you get to +2, and after you +2, he goes to 4. If he's still around, you just -3 again, right? This is one of those planeswalkers where the entire purpose of the planeswalker is to downtick as many times as possible. And Lord Windgrace solves that problem for you really quickly. He fixes your mana, he enables you to ramp really quickly, he forces your opponents to attack into you, which can be disastrous for their attacks due to the sheer power level of your cards. It's fantastic after a board wipe, especially late game where you don't even need the lands, so you just start discarding lands out of your hand and just drawing 2. Overall, just fantastic. I've never seen this 11 happen, but technically it could. Don't worry too much about it. These 2 abilities are where it's at. Now we're going to talk about a few cards that are monocolored, but I think they are worth playing. Open the Way is incredibly powerful in Commander and incredibly powerful in a deck like this. Ideally, you cast this for 6, and then you put 4 lands into play. That is a very good ability, and I would say it's very often underestimated how strong this is. This is fantastic. Yes, the fetch lands come in tapped, that's fine, but once you untap after Open the Way, you are in a position where you are so far ahead, and ideally, or unsurprisingly, can cast every single card out of your hand moving forward. So, fantastic card, not much more to say. Now we're going to 2 of my favorite Praetors that are, once again, they're only 1 color, they only have 2 mana pips, but I think they fundamentally follow the idea of where this deck's direction is. And I think it's really important to consider these. I've talked about them before, I'm not going to bury the lead. It's Sheoldred and Elesh Norn. I've talked to them at length in my video about my Brina deck, about how they both solve board problems, get you really far ahead, act as threats, and in addition, that they work kind of not parallel, they work perpendicular to each other in the fact that one solves one problem and the other solves the other. Sheoldred here is definitely stronger than Elesh Norn with how the deck works, but Elesh Norn being able to clean up boards that this deck suffers against, like token boards, is also really nice. I'm not going to go too much into them. Once again, if you're interested, watch my Brina video. Sheoldred is fantastic. She does so much. You can flip her really reliably in this deck. The True Scriptures is an insane magic card, and she will get you tremendous advantage. Elesh Norn also likewise very powerful. That passive -2/2 will strand cards in your opponent's hands and prevent them from doing a number of things to enable them getting back into the game while turning your mana dorks into threats. If you would be very particular and say, hey Curse, I really want those 3 colored pips. I don't want to use other colored cards, like revealing other cards to put mana like as batteries for these cards. I want them to be self-batteries. You could use the worm, my goodness, the black worm, this is terrible, the one that is 6 mana in black that gives -2/2 across the battlefield, and then your opponents lose life for every time a creature dies. This one I think would also be a very good solution to this problem. I hope that I can find this card. I can't, kind of sad that I cannot remember what this is called, but I would say like that is a very good alternative to this. Sorry, I'm going to multitask and then not edit this out. Massacre Worm. So it is a worm. This one's not on me. Massacre Worm will do a very good impression of this, but I think Alshnorn is just worth it a little more. You could play both, I think. Massacre Worm once again falls into this kind of theming that I really like, where it itself just represents an immediate advantage and a disastrous creature just generally around for your opponents, your aristocrat opponents, your token opponents, things like that, causing so much pressure while being a 6/5 is pretty phenomenal. Also, the fact that this card is like $1 now, I can't even begin to tell you, this card used to be so much money. The fact that it's $1 right now is really, really nice. Take advantage of it, grab it. You'll never have a bad time. That art is so upsetting. You should get it. All right, let's try to hurry up. This is 40 minutes. All right, the last few cards are talking about 5-color cards, and the fact that you get to run them is fantastic. Maelstrom Nexus is a really good trigger for your Omnath, whether you are using it to cast it or something else, being able to immediately get this card 3 mana and potentially get this card down for 2 mana. The first spell you cast each turn has Cascade is just once again a really, really nice way to get incremental, consistent advantage in ways that your opponents just cannot keep up with. And the fact that you get to run this is amazing. The fact that it's $1, also amazing. Conflux is the last card of that we're going to talk about of my additions, and it is once again a situation where you get to run this card. Like this is not traditionally a strong card. It is 8 mana, which is a lot, and it does something super, super hyper specific. But that being said, in a deck like this, Conflux is really, really good. If you can reduce this mana cost down to 5 mana, it's very, very good. Or late game, which is the only time you will pay 8 mana for this drawing your 5 best cards into your hand is absolutely worth 8 mana. You don't mind the fact that you're paying full mana cost, because you could even do things like, you know, late game have 9 mana up, and the white card you get is Swords to Plowshares, and the rest are value cards, right? So you can still set yourself up for the ability to still do something while your opponents are stuck, you know, drawing 1 card at a time. So I honestly think this is a tremendous card, because once again, this is a 5-for-1, which is fantastic, and the cards that you're going to get are probably going to get you even more advantage. Early mid-game, don't worry about this. This is a card in your hand that doesn't do anything. But late game, this is going to be very, very good. And those are my additions and everything I have to say with this deck. I think this deck is super, super sick. We've gone on quite a bit of time. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you, Death Penalties, for sending this deck. It's super cool. I'd love to see it again, and I want to see if you agree with me with the idea of making this like a good stuff value deck, because that's the way it makes sense in my brain, and that's the way we kind of solve a lot of the problems this deck kind of has, is by saying, you know what, doesn't matter, let's make all of our cards have maximum value. When you're dropping Atraxa turn after turn, no one can stop you, right? With that, good luck and happy deck building. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you, and good luck in brewing and building.